So yes, if you've been following me on the gram and on YouTube, you would have known that I bought this car from ATP a year ago and it was bog standard. Now, if you're looking to get a BMW M2 for your next car, wait around, watch the whole video. We're going to go into loads of questions about the car, what I've done to the car, my experience with it, prices, everything. Just to give you a rundown of this vehicle, we've got a carbon splitter from Carbon Factory. We have a full emerald green Avery Dennison to replicate the Isle of Man green in the new G80s wrap. And we have gone for custom 1-of-1 West Forge wheels. We've got them wrapped in Nexon tyres, we've got a stud and nut conversion, carbon fibre mud flaps, all from Swift Performance. But enough of the car's mods, I'm going to do that in a whole nother video, so ask some questions if you want to know about the car's mods and what it's got on it, but let's get into it. Now, why with a £25,000 budget would I pick the BMW M2 over all the other cars you can get for that money? There's one reason for that, and that was content. This car is, from every angle, so aesthetic that you can't take a bad picture of this car. Now, why I say that is I'm a freelance content creator in the automotive scene and I wanted to build my socials a bit more, and with a 25k budget, I'll go into another video, but there's one other car which is my dream car, which I chose the M2 over that. Being in the car scene, you would realize that BMW has pretty much taken over the whole scene. So it was funny how this car actually come about. I wanted an M2 for the longest time and I just couldn't justify the money over getting, you know, these cheap hot hatches that to me could do the same thing. I just couldn't justify the money in getting one of these. Now, I went to ATP about a year ago, and big shout out to Ben for this one, because this car just ticked all the boxes and just come out. It was almost meant to be. I said to them I need an average mileage because obviously price-wise, I need it cheaper. At the time, I wanted a blue one. Katie didn't want a blue one, so we had to compromise and get a grey one. So I went, with all these boxes, I went to ATP and I said it needs to be semi-low mileage, it needs low ownership, high spec, like I want to get a good base M2. And not even 15 minutes later, they literally come to me and said, there's one that we would take in, but it's too high mileage for us. It was on 50,000 miles, it was mineral grey, it was one lady owner from new, and it already had like the splitter kit and everything like that. So already I'm saving myself a few £1,000s. So without any real convincing, I said, yeah, I want that car, I'm gonna go get it. We drove about 3 hours north to go collect the car, and there was one thing that I didn't check on this car, which I wish I did now, and that is the heating. For some reason, I never checked the heating in the car. I was too sort of blindsided by how sick it looked. And yeah, I just bought it. So it's a year later and I still haven't got the heating done. I'm gonna start with what you're all here for, and that's the maintenance, what you can expect when you buy a BMW M2. Okay, so we're just gonna go for a drive now, and I'm gonna explain to you some pros and cons about owning this car, and sort of gauge your expectations on what you can expect when you own one of these BMW M2s. Now, the first one has to be the biggest point for me, which is the aesthetics of the car. Now, I have never come across a car that I have owned and that I have taken a picture of where I don't prefer the front or back. I think now with the CSL style bonnet, the front's kind of taking my choosing, but honestly, in stock form, this car from the front, from the back, the side profiles, everything like that just looks incredibly good. Now, you can't dispute the sound of this thing. Being the OG M2, meaning the original M2 that they made, got the M55 engine, which not everybody loves, but they came out with the S55 engine on the comps and they don't sound nearly as good. Now, I've got a custom Overkill full turbo back exhaust, and it has completely transformed the sound of this car. I'm just gonna put it in Sports Plus so you can hear this, and hopefully you can. I'm going to open the window slightly, couple downshifts, and it just revs all the way. Hopefully there's not too much wind noise. And those burbles, by the way, this car is stock, so although I've got an intake in it and full turbo back exhaust, it is still stock. I am waiting to go stage 2, but I need that charge pipe first. That is something else we need to mention about this car. The charge pipe, even on stock power, will fail on you, and it's not a good time when it happens. you will just never get bored of this sound. Now I'm going to throw up some clips here of more raw sounds of the car and even a stock sound of the car, what it sounds like in stock. Now again, these are pros that I find about the car in my ownership. Obviously everybody's different, and there is one thing that I like about this car, and it's the size of it. Bigger than your normal hatchbacks, but it's still surprisingly small for a saloon shaped car. It's only got 2 doors, so you keep that sleek sort of, you know, less daily car look vibe about it. Now, although it being like a smaller car up against your M5s and your M3s, it's still surprisingly spacious. Me and Katie went on a Europe tour and we packed everything in just the boot alone. We had nothing in the back seat, so we could have taken passengers if we wanted to. And yeah, we had no stress of getting the bits in the car. It can be seen to be a good point and a bad point. That this car's too good. Like, although that sounds really biased, and some people may not enjoy it as much, but in my ownership of the car, for a year that's gone by now, I explain it to people like this: there's no other car that I can go to now that's going to offer me the same without just ticking a box. You know, there's cars that I want to get like a C63, but to think about it, like, I only really want the sound. You're going to pretty much get the same MPG, if not better, in the BMW M2. The sound is a lot better on the C63, but again, the sound in this is just incredible. The looks of this, I want to say, is better, and the overall practicality is the same as the C63. Like, there's nothing I'm going to get that's better. Maybe the interior, but for the sake of having a real driver-focused car like the M2, the interior is just not good enough for me to convert to a C63. And that's good, but also bad, because now when I want to go to a new car, it's, you know, I don't know if it's ever going to feel the same as this. Another pro to add to this list of pros with the BMW M2 is the handling. This is a very driver-focused, track-focused car, and I've been on a few track days with it, and it being my first rear-wheel drive car, I almost hit that bird. Now, it being my first rear-wheel drive car, I was a bit intimidated with it. It's got a lot of power, it's very short wheelbase, so it's very snappy. But when I took this car on track, I was so surprised on how much I was able to lean on it. And what I mean by that is when you lean on a front-wheel drive car, you can feel it understeering, and you can feel the corner getting wider and wider as you go around it. But the M2, there was a couple corners I would take, and I would almost accelerate into it, and the car would plant itself and grip, and just, yeah, I was blown away by it. I was honestly blown away by it. It's my first BMW, and I understand now why people say about the whole driver focus thing and how good it is at handling. And I want to end this pro list with something that I found most about owning this car is the community. Like, now, because I use this for social media and pretty much social media only, I only really use this car once or twice a week when I come out to film content like this. The people I've met through the scene, like R44 Performance, Swift Performance, it's a higher end of the car scene, but yet we're still all car enthusiasts and we love them. Having your hot hatches and everybody giving them a stigma of your pops and bangs, and you know, you're picking up girls from McDonald's and all of that. Things like the R8s and Porsches and everything, and everybody gets a bit a level above you, if you know what I mean. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced it, but yeah, the BMW sort of platform and this area of like cars, for the car scene, I want to say is the best. But with all these pros, of course, there are some cons about this car. I can't lie, it has taken me a bit of time now to come up with some cons about this car. I think the main con for me is going to be the price. The price of everything. M-Tax is real. M-Tax is real, and it is a bit ridiculous. Even for your entry-level M2, which you can argue this is, but at the same time it shares a lot of parts with the M3s and M4s, which are your main M cars. So tax for the OG, I think we're looking at about £350 for the year, which is kind of expensive. I think a lot of cars now are coming up in the market. I think my old Fiesta STs used to be about £100, now they're about 180. So you can expect, you know, a high tax cost straight off the bat. A lot of people now are going to talk about insurance. Now, insurance for me is surprisingly good because we have changed some things with it. I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you'd like to know my secrets, message me on the Instagram and I'll tell you what I done. For my first years of insurance, with almost declared being the wheels, wrap, exhaust, splitter kit, everything like that, it cost me about £1,900. And that's with about 7 years no claims, and I am 25. Now, our second year renewal, which I was really not looking forward to, it's come back at £1,000 cheaper. It's come back at about £950, which I'm over the moon with, which means I can keep this car for another year. I believe PS4 tyres on each corner, Michelin PS4 tyres, is going to set you back around £320 to £350. I think we all have this con when it comes to BMW, it's the interior. Why have we used the same interior for like 10, 15 years? While everybody else, like Mercedes, we can't compete with. We actually can't compete with their interior. And this being the OG M2, but like a facelift OG M2, it's got like the digital dash, but even before then, like the screen, like the dials, like BMW, you needed to up your game with this M2. Like, I'm being like serious. Now, before we move on to the questions about what my followers have to ask about my ownership of the car and what they can expect, it has to be the performance of this. Stock form, the performance is great. I think it's really good. It's 360, 370 brakes. Don't quote me down in the comments. But yeah, it's just under 400 brake, which is fine. It is very quick. And for an auto as well, it can pick up quite fast. Like I was saying earlier in the video, is I built this car for content, and I bought this car for content. Now with content, I wanted to push the power as much as I could, and you just can't. You surprisingly can't. It's a 3-litre turbo car, and I believe out of a stage 1 intake, full turbo back exhaust, I'm getting about 400, 410 brake, which 30, 40 brake for a stage 1 is okay in the grand scheme of things, but not okay for a 3-litre turbo. And even worse than that, when you go to stage 2 and you've got your charge pipe and you've got your intercooler and you're about 7k deep in the car, you get about an extra 20 brake, 10, 15, 20 brake. You come to about 430 brake, I think is the average for a stage 2 OG M2, which I was very disappointed with. So I've asked my Instagram what questions you want to ask about the BMW M2, and I've got a load here, so I'm just going to run through them quickly, see what the public have been asking about the car and the ownership. So the first question is insurance prices. I already went over it briefly, but what I want to tell you is if I insured it legit by myself, no other drivers, it was £4.5 grand with no mods, and it was 13 grand with the splitter kit. I have managed to get it to £2,000 for my first year and £900 for my second year. Another one is, it looks better standard, but I can appreciate the effort gone into it. That's kind of like a backhanded comment. I don't really know how to take that. I am a bit offended by it, but we've modified the car to my taste. It would only be natural if somebody was to say they don't like it. Best old shit moments, I'll be honest, I haven't actually had any in this car. There were times where I got the car mapped. It had an injector issue. Now I was looking at about a £1,500 bill. That was a bit of an oh shit moment, but at the same time, I took the map off and it runs fine. So I'm not fussed. What's your favorite mod on the car? I really don't know. I think the wrap is probably the best visually, but it's not my favorite mod. One of them probably has to be the bonnet. Every M2 I've seen that has this bonnet, it has been an absolute must for me since owning this car. So yeah, that's quite a big mod. I think also the West Forge wheels, they are a full set of custom West Forge wheels. Visually, it's gonna have to be the wrap. I think the wrap has changed it the most. It's the mod that gets the most comments about it. But my favorite mod on this car, apart from the West Forge custom wheels, which I absolutely love, has to be the exhaust. It has to be the exhaust in like pretty much every car. That paired with the Eventry intake, the cabin noise you're getting and the sense of driving when you're having this is next to nothing else. What's the worst thing about this car? The worst thing about this car, I guess, it has to be in the interior. The interior is just not, it's not up to par with the rest of the car. So, and I definitely have to get some interior carbon on it. That is a must for the next mod. Another question is it not boring yet? I can't seem to own a car longer than a few months. Judging by my track record, was exactly the same. I could not keep a car for longer than like 6 months at a time. I think I kept a car for about a year. That was just boring. And that was because I changed cars so much that I actually didn't want to go through the hassle of buying another car and changing it again. But this car, I don't want to get rid of this car. It's the first car that I've had that every time I drive it, like, I love it. I just love this car. What's one thing every potential M2 owner should know about? It's not something that I would even know about, but owning this car, it would have to be the services. You have to make sure that this car is serviced up to date and on time every year. What I've realized now about being at dealerships that buy and sell these cars even if you're missing one service or if one service was overdue, they just won't buy it. But make sure you have a full service history and it's all up to date. Now, I'm gonna end on this one. Does the BMW M2 live up to the hype? I've really had to think about this one and think about my ownership with the car, and that I love this car and that I'm very hard to please. Now, this is the first car that I have owned. Does it live up to the hype? Yes. Yes, it does. Should you buy a BMW M2? Yes. Since I bought this one last year, they absolutely plummeted in price. So what this was on the market for £29,000, you could probably get these on the market now on about 50, 60,000 miles for about £25,000 to £23,000. For the money is absolutely insane. So does it live up to the hype? Yes. But that's it for the BMW M2. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope I'm going to keep enjoying this car for another year. And if you've made it this far, like, subscribe, do all of that. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one.